Welcome everybody to the final presentation regarding athletics in impoverished high schools as a pathway to post-secondary opportunities. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury in Connecticut is currently looking to increase teenager enrollment ages 13 to 18. For more than a century, Boys and Girls Clubs have played a significant role in helping kids and teens achieve academic success through year-round programs designed to help graduate high school, pursue a college degree, and join the workforce. Unfortunately, the percentage of teenager enrollment is significantly lower than our students between the ages of 5 to 12. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury wants to expand their programming to include options that are appealing to high school students, and by examining the likelihood that high school students who play sports will go to college. This will justify adding competitive sports teams at the club. To stay aligned with the Boys and Girls Club of America's national agenda, our local club is looking to find programs that will increase teenager enrollment and ultimately help them focus on attending a school of higher education. According to the National Clearinghouse Research Center, only a little more than half of the 2012 graduates from poverty-stricken cities attend college that year. Although this trend has continued in recent years, it is important to examine some of the factors that played into the decision of the students who did not go for a post-secondary school degree. According to a 2014 study conducted by the University of Kansas, the authors argue that the lessons learned in athletics, combined with the knowledge that they must do well in school to participate, improves students' persistence and chances for success. If our study shows that high school athletes from high-poverty cities are more likely to attend college, there is enough justification to add new competitive sports at an after-school organization too. All of this leads to our defined statement of the problem. Too many teens who attend high school in high-poverty areas do not seek post-secondary education, which may be related to the lack of involvement in extracurricular activities, such as athletics, at the high school age. The purpose of our study is simple. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury wants to expand its teen programming to include competitive athletic teams that will ultimately increase teen enrollment and their likelihood of pursuing a post-secondary degree. The all-encompassing research question that will drive this research project is, are high school athletes from high-poverty areas more likely to attend a post-secondary school than a non-athlete? There are two statistics that highlight the importance of this study. Less than 30% of students in the bottom quarter of national household incomes enroll in a four-year school. Also, only 29% of all children that the Boys and Girls Club of America serves are 13 and older. If the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury can increase teen attendance through competitive athletic teams, the number of teams who seek a post-secondary degree may also increase. As a preliminary look into assumptions and limitations, I would have to assume study participants will answer survey questions truthfully, gender and race will not impact answers of respondents or likelihood of attending college, and going to a post-secondary school will remain as crucial in the future as it is today. Possible limitations that I could come into contact with are a lack of participation from survey recipients and a lack of funding, which would make it challenging to communicate the importance of the study. While dealing with human participants in the study, a request to the Institutional Review Board must be submitted to Johnson Wales University. It is also imperative to keep every participant's personal information completely confidential. The study's theoretical orientation revolves around social science. There have been numerous studies conducted in recent years involving the relationship between adolescent sports and the path out of poverty. These studies were the springboard to my research topic. Many of these studies looked at the likelihood of high school athletes that will play a sport at the collegiate level. I want to broaden those results and consider the student athletes who did not have the chance to play at a sport at the next level, but use the structure of athletics to drive them towards earning a post-secondary degree. In regards to my prediction about the study, I believe there will be a greater likelihood of high school athletes from high-poverty areas who will attend college than non-athletes from the same area. For my study, the independent variable will be the participation of individuals in a high school-sponsored sport. The dependent variable will be whether or not that individual attended a post-secondary school. As the study progresses, it is important to define a few of these subjective terms. For the purpose of my study, the poverty line we will examine is relative to the number of people in your household and the combined household income. For example, a family of 4 will be considered below the poverty line if their combined household income is less than $24,300 a year. A high poverty area is defined as a town or city where more than 20% of the population is below that poverty threshold. And it is also important to define an athlete. For our study, an athlete is any high school student who was a participant on a varsity, junior varsity, or freshman sport team sponsored by the educational institution in which he or she is enrolled for an entire season. Now as we enter the literature review section, you will see the informational base that I conducted my research around. This article, College-Going Benefits of High School Sports Participation, which was found using a Sage Premier database, is from a 2005 Youth and Society journal. The study took data from 3 national data sets to determine if there was a correlation between high school athletic participation and college enrollment. Furthermore, this study examined the relationship through different characteristics such as gender and race over 3 decades, 1980, 1990, and 2002 respectively. Based on the over 30,000 subjects that they examined, this study concluded that since 1980, the college-going benefits of participating in high school athletics are evident, but the characteristics that predict the participation has changed. With white males seeing the greatest correlation between participation in high school sports and college enrollment, black males continue to show improvement over the last 3 decades. This study is relevant to my research project because the highest percentage of this country's population living in poverty are racial minorities. This article, which is from an earlier volume of Youth and Society Journal, takes a more in-depth look whether involvement in high school sports has any long-term impact for females, most notably earning a post-secondary degree. In this study, the researchers examined data collected by the National Center of Educational Statistics. Their research was based around the distribution of questionnaires to 8th grade graduates in 1988 and their ability to follow up with the recipients over following years until they were expected to graduate high school and college. The results of the study showed that of the high school females who competed in high school athletics, they were more likely to have graduated college within 6 years of graduating high school. These results will be beneficial for my research project because if the results show that females from impoverished areas are also more likely to enroll in post-secondary school, there would be enough justification to add competitive female sports teams as well. The article Brown in Black and White, Then and Now, which I found using the same Sage Premier database, examines the social realities of education and the influence of sports in African American males in the United States. This article uses Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision as a point of reference in determining the changes in the social perception of African Americans in these different realms. In terms of sport, this article makes a strong case that although blacks are typically subject to affirmative action principles, they will tend to focus on athletic opportunities that align with their economic status. This article also suggests that black males are more likely to look at sport as means of social mobility and will put so much emphasis on developing their athletic abilities that they typically struggle academically. This article, which was released in a March 2008 volume of the American Behavioral Sciences Journal, reviews the theoretical differences of black high school athletes, but unfortunately does not give statistical data to prove it. This article is yet another review of secondary data in which the study explores the long-term effects of setting academic standards for high school athletes and measuring their success in the college classroom. This article points out the reality that a large percentage of student athletes at the collegiate level are granted admission to the school on a special basis because of their athletic abilities instead of meeting their intellectual threshold. Since 1984, the NCAA has set a minimum requirement that high school athletes must meet through their GPA and SAT scores before they can compete. In 1993, a study proved that this approach has actually increased the number of collegiate student athletes who completed their bachelor's degree. Although my research project won't be examining a high school mandated team exactly, it is important to understand that holding these high school aged athletes to a high academic standard will only increase their success in the future. The article, Consequences of Participation in Interscholastic Sports, is a review of various studies, which looks at the ancillary benefits or consequences of participating in high school athletics. In addition to statistics showing that athletes get slightly better grades than do comparable non-athletes, this study also suggests that athletics also serves as a platform for these students to develop the aspirations of success in the classroom before they can compete. These authors cite a study that suggests student athletes are encouraged to attend a school of higher education more than non-athletes, and that high school athletes surround themselves with other students who share similar athletic goals. All of these qualities, which are developed through high school level athletics, serve as justification that a Boys and Girls Club should include competitive sports teams in order to provide these social benefits. In terms of my research project, I believe it would be important to examine the debate between two of the highest regarded options that high school basketball players can choose from. This article from an August 2012 New Haven Register newspaper provided first-hand opinions of local basketball players and coaches on the realities behind high school and amateur athletic union, or AAU, basketball. It is important to my research project because if the research justifies creating a competitive sports team, one of the most enticing and popular options would be to create an AAU basketball team. There are mixed reviews on both sides, but the overall consensus is that high school basketball provides exposure of players in a team-first mentality where the AAU basketball stage provides more opportunities to be seen by coaches and scouts. Although this article is strictly opinion-based, I think the subjects that the New Haven Register interviewed on the matter helps provide insight into the debate between these two options. Now we will transition into the third milestone of this research proposal project, which included our research methodology. I think one of the most efficient ways to introduce my plan of action is to read the introductory letter that will be distributed to all prospective participants prior to them completing the survey. This one is sent to a hypothetical Mr. Smith. Dear Mr. Smith, I am reaching out to you for your participation in a research study examining the likelihood of high school students from impoverished communities who attended a post-secondary institution. Your responses are important in enabling me to obtain a better understanding of the social issue and could help benefit a wide range of children moving forward. I want to assure you that participation is completely voluntary, and if you do decide to participate, your responses will remain completely confidential. If you would like to help me out, you can locate the survey at surveyplanet.com. The answers from your survey will be recorded through the Survey Planet server and then distributed to me through a share file. I will be using all of the data collected to help my colleagues and myself at the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury in Connecticut to determine whether or not there is justification to add high school level athletics at our location to further our mission of sending our members to college. I truly appreciate your time, and if you do decide to participate, I hope you find it enjoyable. If you have any questions pertaining to the survey or the results that we discover, please do not hesitate to contact me at my email. Once again, thank you for all of your help. Devin Bertrand. This research project will utilize a quantitative research method to measure both the perception of respondents who see post-secondary education as important and offer statistical validation that participating in high school athletics increases the likelihood of pursuing a post-secondary degree. As I look to uncover the relationship between high school athletes and their likelihood of attending a post-secondary school, I plan to use an online-based survey to gather primary data from my sample population. In order for my sample population to gain a better understanding behind the purpose of the study and where to physically locate it, I will send the introductory letter which you saw on the first slide. As we discuss how I designed my survey, I think it is important to look at the actual questions that I used. The first types of questions are open response questions, simply asking what city and state they grew up in and the name of the high school they attended. As I look to gradually get more in depth with my questioning, I moved to multiple choice questions such as name the sports you played in high school and what years did you do so. From those general questions, I could easily differentiate between athlete and non-athlete respondents. As I attempted to understand their perception about high school athletics and if they felt they were a springboard for their future, I implemented 9 questions that were used to gauge their views on various topics. Some of these views were along the lines of, I believe that my coaches and teachers stressed the importance of going to college, and I believe that high school sports pushed me to attend college. Their responses were on a rating scale and had 6 possible answers ranging from strongly disagree, disagree, somewhat disagree, somewhat agree, agree, and strongly agree. If you would like to see the full list of survey questions, please feel free to look at my survey from the link provided at the bottom of the slide. To ensure protection of human subjects, it is important to remember that throughout the survey there are not any questions asking the respondents to provide personal identification information. The most direct question asked is what town they live in and what high school they went to. Based on the sample population, which covers multiple towns and multiple high schools, the identification of all participants remains anonymous to the researcher as well as the reported results. With the use of technology, there is always the chance of personal information being stored, but it is communicated to the participants in the introductory letter that all information collected will remain confidential. During the reporting process, only general statistics will be published instead of individual answers. Due to time and financial restraints, I feel that it would be efficient to narrow down my sample to respondents from select high schools in the state of Connecticut. With that being said, 7 cities in Connecticut have greater than 20% of their total population below the poverty line. If you could remember from my Milestone 1 project, I decided to use that statistic to determine which cities and towns are truly impoverished. Of those 7 cities, 5 of them have populations big enough to have their own public school system. I then used those 5 cities to randomly select 1 to 3 high schools from each, dependent on their population. I made the conscious decision to survey all 3 of the Waterbury high schools based on the notion that I believe those statistics will be most beneficial to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury. As we move along, you will get to see how I truly defined who my sample populations will be. As I mentioned before, in terms of what locations I was going to research, I felt that based on financial resources and the probability of getting participants, I was going to focus on Connecticut high schools in cities where more than 20% of the population was below poverty threshold. If the town or city had multiple high schools, then I randomly selected which ones I was going to ask to participate to generate a smaller sample population. I am going to distribute letters to graduates from the selected high schools from the years 2012, 2010, and 2008 so that I receive data from 3 different classes. I also chose these years because if the participants decided to attend college, they are more likely to be home by now rather than still away at school. I am going to need the assistance from the high schools generating a list of graduates, athletes and non-athletes, with their last addresses on file to mail them an introductory letter. Prior to the administration of the survey to my sample population, I sent a primary copy of it to the 2012 graduate from Bassick High School in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I wanted to test the validity and reliability of the questions asked in my survey. I concluded that in my preliminary version of the survey, I did not put a non-applicable answer choice for the questions pertaining only to high school athletes, so the results were skewed slightly because the non-athletes who participated could not skip the question without providing an answer. As previously mentioned, I will be working closely with the selected high school's administration to develop a list of graduates from the 2012, 2010, and 2008 classes and their last reported address. I will then send them a personal letter explaining the purpose of the study and providing the URL to fill out the survey. The survey's results will be then collected on the Survey Planet server until I request a digital file of them. For the fairly simple quantitative data that this research project looks to obtain, using the SurveyPlanet.com server will be effective in collecting and exporting the received responses. One of the best features about using this website is their ability to place numerical values with the answer description so that the readouts are already coded and easier to work with. This website has the ability to export the results in Word, Excel, CSV, and JSON files for further examination or print out hard copies of the reports. As it pertains to answering the research questions, I will be able to use the Excel file to process the statistics that will ultimately answer whether there is a likelihood of high school athletes attending college and their perceptions on the matter. It is inevitable that I will have to go through and examine the data closely in order to identify improper data that could alter my results. Once the data is clean, I will be able to use the analytical processors that Excel offers and validate the hypothesis that I have developed. In terms of missing data, I predict that I will have trouble generating responses from participants outside of Waterbury. The recipients of letters from the other 4 cities do not have a true connection to help the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury, and without incentive, I am assuming that the response numbers will be low. I also believe that the utilization of a physical mailed letter instead of an email will also result in lower responses. I decided to use the physical mail addresses because the high schools are more likely to have that information on file than an email address in which a person might not even check frequently. If a survey is marked having unanswered questions, then I will make sure that that survey is removed before any analysis takes place. In my survey, because there are questions that only pertain to previous high school athletes, it is important to remember that participation is encouraged by both athletes and non-athletes, but to separate those responses when comparing their perceptions of going to college. I am expecting to see my hypothesis validated in terms that high school athletes from impoverished cities are more likely to attend a post-secondary school than a non-athlete from the same area. I am also anticipating that high school athletes received more encouragement and positive influence to pursue a college degree based on their athletic status. If these predictions are accurate, then there will be sufficient justification for adding competitive high school level sports teams to our curriculum at the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury. The final section of this presentation will look at the business side of the project. It will begin with an introductory cover letter to our professor. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury wants to conduct a research project that examines whether or not there is a correlation between high school athletes from impoverished areas and the likelihood of attending a post-secondary institution. If the results show a strong relationship, there will be justification to add a competitive basketball team at the club in order to recruit and retain teenagers. The following documents will include an executive summary, qualifications of the researcher, a budget, schedule, special resources, and project management. Please review these documents as an addition to my research proposal. The implications of my research will stem far beyond the predicted results. If there is data to show that high school students who play sports are more likely to attend a college or university, then by adding a competitive sports team we are staying aligned with the club's mission to keep our members on track to academic success. The project's executive summary is as follows. According to the Boys and Girls Club of America statistics, only 29% of the youth at the club serves is 13 or older. At the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury, these numbers are even lower. Based on the economic trends that the city of Waterbury has seen in recent years, it is my goal to research the relationship between high school athletes from impoverished areas, similar to Waterbury, and the likelihood of attending a post-secondary school. If the results of my research suggest that there is a positive correlation, the implications of adding a competitive sports team for high school age members could increase teenage attendance and retention. Throughout my proposed research plan, the sample population that is asked to complete a survey, which will not only include questions whether or not they attended college after participating in high school sponsored sport, but it also asks questions regarding their perception on the matter. For example, it is my goal to understand if these athletes felt pressure to attend a post-secondary school because of their athletic status. These ancillary questions will assist in understanding if there are additional social benefits to justify implementing a competitive basketball program at our club. The knowledge derived from this research project will be beneficial for generations of underprivileged children for years to come. I would like to see increased attendance of teenagers in our club in the short term, but to be able to share my experiences and assist other clubs in similar activities in the future. The implications of this research go far beyond having kids play basketball. It could potentially put them on track to be successful in life. I have always shown a true interest in making a difference in the lives of children throughout sports. As a former athlete, I can credit my coaches, teammates, parents, and overall experiences with who I have become today. I feel that sports are a great avenue for children to learn the power of hard work, discipline, and the ability to work as a team to achieve a goal. My personal bias leads me to believe that sports also can be a driving factor behind academic success. As a graduate of the University of New Haven Management of Sports Industries program, I have always seen a relationship between athletics and academics. During my undergraduate work, I was also a member of the honors program, which required me to uptake a written thesis prior to graduation. Although I took part in multiple smaller research projects during my studies, my honors thesis was far more extensive and ultimately proved to have positive results. I look to examine whether there is long-term viability in putting a National Hockey League or NHL team in Las Vegas, Nevada. When I wrote my thesis, this was just a frivolous thought circulating around the hockey community, but since I published it, it has become a reality for many of the reasons that I laid out in my writing. I understand the importance of in-depth research to justify making a decision. My heart and passion is behind leaving a positive impact on the lives of children throughout sports. I truly believe that if the research shows a positive correlation between high school athletes from impoverished areas and the likelihood of attending a post-secondary school, then we could potentially help change their lives. The budget for this research project is fairly simple, with the greatest expenses coming from mailing the introductory letter. As you can see, my plan is to pay for 6 months subscription to Survey Planet for ample time to download the questionnaire results. The website has two options, a yearly subscription for $180 for the whole year, or if you pay per month, it is $20 per. As far as mailing expenses, I found approximate numbers for graduating classes of the selected high schools. I added each of those totals together to realize that I will be distributing approximately 10,200 letters for this research project. I then went on Staples.com to get average prices for paper, envelopes, and stamps. As you can see, the subtotaled expenses for mailing letters is slightly higher than $5,800, and the total expenses comes to $5,928.54. As far as a plan of action schedule, I have decided that I am going to begin this process on the 1st of December when I make first contact with the selected high school's administration to request a list of graduate names and addresses for the selected years. It is important to have the mailing supplies on hand so I can start preparing individualized letters to our sample population. It should take a couple of weeks to finalize the letters, so on the 15th, I decided I will start my 6-month subscription to Survey Planet. Over the next few months, I will regularly check respondent participation and analyze the data as it is collected. By March, we likely won't see any more respondents, so I will close the option to complete the survey. From then on, I will be compiling all the recorded responses and analyze the data appropriately. The overall success of my research stems from my ability to collect a list from each school of addresses for the graduates from 2012, 2010, and 2008. This will require me to work directly with administration and communicate the importance of my study. It will be interesting what it will take to earn their trust and support without financial compensation. I am confident that I will receive this information. If I receive this information from the schools, then I will gain enough participation to make a significant conclusion on the matter. It is important to note that I am willing to make changes to my approach as this project progresses. If after January 1, 2017, I feel I am not receiving sufficient responses, I will have to explore methods of persuading my sample population to participate. One possibility is to offer an incentive to participate, such as a gift card. If this alternative method is used, I will have to request more funds to assist paying for such incentives. One of the most essential aspects of a successful research project is the ability and willingness to adapt. As this project progresses, I will make necessary changes to my approach as I see fit. As the only individual carrying out this research project, I also must remember to keep an unbiased perspective on all results. I am very passionate about potentially bringing an exciting new opportunity to the Boys and Girls Club, but it is essential that I remember that it is for the overall good of the club. Another element that I must remain aware of is the notion that I could overlook discrepancies in the data because I am the only one who will be examining it. As my project progresses, I will be forced to ask additional people, family, friends, or colleagues, to look at the data and see if they caught anything that I missed. I think it is important to have an outsider occasionally look at the data to have an unbiased perspective on the matter. I want to thank everyone who took the time to listen to my presentations and provide considerable feedback along the way. This has been a great learning experience, and I hope everyone has had the same level of satisfaction. I wish you all the best of the luck in the future, and thank you.